Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the YPOers and friends around the world. I'm Julie Simon, co-chair of the YPO Psychedelic Medicine for Mental Health Group. And for almost 3 years now, I have been providing psychedelic integration groups for YPO members. I've dedicated my life to advancing psychedelic-assisted aftercare, not only because of the overwhelming evidence supporting its effectiveness, but also because of my own personal experience. Currently, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Integro, which is launching in early 2026, a comprehensive digital integration platform focused on achieving lasting behavior change. We combine community, live groups, and precision personalized content, leveraging AI to transform integration and to build the first large-scale validated data model on best practices. Today's session will run for 60 minutes with a Q&A session following my conversation with our guest today. If you have questions, please submit them via the Q&A feature on your Zoom screen, and we'll address them during the Q&A portion at about 40 minutes after the hour. Please note that this session is being recorded, and all registrants will receive a link to the recording. This is a great reason to sign up for future programs, even if you can't attend live. Today's guests are Tony Massey, CEO of Gladstone Wellness, Josh Stevens, CEO of Beckley Clinical, Scott Shannon, founder of the Wholeness Center, and Tom Fiegel of Beyond, Ibogaine, all of whom are currently focused on expansion of their businesses in interesting ways within the psychedelic medicine space. We're incredibly grateful and privileged to be joined today. First up is Dr. Scott Shannon, CEO of Wholeness. Dr. Shannon, welcome to the YPO Global Conference Call.
Thanks, Julie. Happy to be here with you.
Let me spotlight you here. There you go, Scott. So, I first met you and you were speaking at a conference that I was attending. And I was really impressed with what you had to say. You are a psychiatrist, and you talked about the medical model, and you talked about kind of transforming this medical model and how you saw psychiatry being, I think you used the word reductionism. Could you speak a little bit to that and how your philosophy is different as a psychiatrist and kind of the troublemaker aspect of you as well?
Oh boy, I'd be happy to. Well, I've been in psychiatry for 40 plus years, and it's been an interesting and frustrating journey. And I think the part that I've always struggled with is the fact that psychiatry is a paradigm focused on reductionism, materialism, and a very limited view of the human capacity. And I think what we are sort of compelled to do as psychiatrists is to fix people. We are supposed to have intimate knowledge of their brains, their neurotransmitters, and all the processes and pharmacology involved. And our our onus is to fix people with the correct neurotransmitter adjustment and to fix a broken machine. Unfortunately, that model does really not have a role for healing. That model does really not have a role for experience and the full person to express themselves. And certainly, it is very limited in its willingness to admit the power of spirit. And for those and other reasons, I've just really always felt pushed to step outside the conventional box of psychiatry and try to find other modes of healing and preferably a transformative model that's based on the human capacity to heal, grow, and move forward. And I think psychedelics represent a very good example of the power of transformation that moves us out of sort of daily management of misery into a transformative model where people have very limited encounters with a catalyst such as ketamine, MDMA, psilocybin. And, I had the pleasure of being connected with Andrew Weil in the 70s, and his philosophy and perspective has really changed the way that I think about things and the way that I've navigated in the world.
Now, out of all of our panelists today, you've been in this space longer than anyone. What could you share, like the learnings that you've had from working within this field, as well as in Colorado being the first licensed psilocybin center, I believe.
Well, I think the key word is patience, because when I was working with MDMA in the early 80s before it was scheduled in 85, and I was just so frustrated by that inappropriate action and have been involved in this effort to try to bring it forward. And for many years, there was really just nothing going on. There was no potential. The FDA had shut everything down, and there was really very little to do. But I think now it is really a sort of a second coming, a second wave, a renaissance, people will say. And I think it's just 5 years ago, I would not have predicted we would be where we're at. And I think it's accelerating, and I think it's going to be pervasive. And it's affecting many different streams. There's the medicalization stream, which I think we're focused on to some degree today. There's the religious freedom stream. There's deregulation stream, and there's obviously the underground stream. So we have all these different streams that are flowing forward. And this is really a moment in our culture. And I think it's a paradigm shifting moment.
Which stream are you on, Scott?
Well, most of my life has been dedicated to the medicalization stream because I think this can transform psychiatry, and psychiatry really needs this uh, sort of kick in the pants, if you will. And so I've been involved in MDMA research. I've been involved with Beckley and 5-MeO research, MindMed and LSD research. We've been working with ketamine and trying to do innovative things for the last 8 to 10 years. And I'm just really committed to the medicalization. I don't know that that's the best stream or the only stream, but I think there's a wide group of Americans, and I think many of us on this call share that if we can bring this into medicalization appropriately, if we can bring in insurance access, then we just really widen the base that we're talking about here. Because if we stay in Colorado's regulated model only, we're talking we may reach 5% of the people in need, and we need to do better than that.
Now, when you call yourself a troublemaker, in what way do you feel that's happened or that you've pushed?
Um, I keep trying to bring innovative ideas into the belly of the beast. I think one of the things that you and I had talked about in San Francisco was bringing a ketamine assisted psychedelic model group therapy for executives, physician executives, nurses, in the healthcare model, and using that as a Trojan horse to bring psychedelic culture, which is a culture of healing and transformation, into healthcare, and one that validates the woundedness that happens in providing frontline healthcare. We're seeing burnout rates of 40, 50, even 60% for nurses and doctors in hospital and primary care settings. And this is costing healthcare executives enormous bottom line damage. We're talking, hundreds of millions of dollars for a large healthcare system. It's real. And I think this is a way we can create trouble of the good kind. I think it was John Lewis that said he loved to create trouble of the good kind.
Yes, I never thought you were trouble of the bad kind. But I think one of the things that really appreciate about you is the understanding of the culture of this medicine. And a lot of people come at this medicine thinking it's, this, business as usual, or it's another molecule, or it's another thing like that. And you truly understand the multidimensionality of it and come at it from that perspective, not business as usual.
Yeah, I think it's a big mistake to think that psychedelics are just the new Prozac, because I went through the Prozac wave in the late 80s and early 90s, and there was a lot of hype and excitement, but it was never a paradigm shifting moment. It was just a broader access to a very limited model. And I think what we have the opportunity to hear is to really change the model that includes healing and transformation. And that's where I'm compelled to go.
And what are your thoughts on providers or people who run businesses in this space who are offering medicine to people? What are your thoughts? And I know this is something that's talked about a lot, but about them also having experienced the medicine themselves to understand what's being offered.
Yeah, we certainly emphasize that in our trainings. We spun off a nonprofit about 5 years ago called PRATI, Psychedelic Research and Training Institute. And one of our primary sort of principles underlying it is that you really need to understand this terrain deeply and personally to be the best agent and guide and facilitator. And so our trainings are always experiential because I think that's a core element. And we certainly, if we're going about training people that work, employees at wholeness, we really like to include experiential work because it just deepens their understanding and their ability to connect and guide and train and educate. Yeah, I think it's pivotal.
Final question. You brought on an outside investor. Um, Tell me what your thoughts were in wanting to take in outside capital.
Well, we had never offered ourselves up for sale. We've always just been a unique, innovative player in this space. And in the last 5 years, I think I was approached by 10 or 12 different entities that wanted to buy us, that just sought us out, found us, and wanted to buy us. Most of them wanted to, scale and bail is the way I think of it. They just wanted to duplicate what we were doing all over the country and then get out and leave us in a sort of a naked skeleton of what we once were. But we sort of moved away from that, and then we were approached by Jameson Monroe, who was an individual who had been through his own process in healthcare. So he understood healthcare, but he'd always also gone through a personal process. His wife is a psychedelically informed psychotherapist, and we really just aligned on mission and vision. And we felt like we could move forward in bringing his expertise because Mary Rondo, my partner, and I think we understand deeply the clinical work, but we really didn't know business at all. Marketing was just it was just a pain in the butt. We didn't understand it, and we've, I think done poorly at it. But that has really changed with bringing on his expertise about how to run a business effectively and market it effectively and grow in a thoughtful way that fills out the space effectively. So yeah, it's been a real positive change over the last 3 months.
Well, I think you've definitely found a friend in Jameson Monroe and definitely somebody who understands the psychedelic culture. So thank you for joining us, Scott, and we'll see you back for the Q&A.
My pleasure, Julie.
All right, Tom.
Yes.
Um, so just for those who don't know, which is maybe many of you, I have just in the past couple months returned from actually attending Beyond myself. And Tom at Beyond offers Ibogaine, and it was something that's not really available in the United States, and he operates in Mexico, and because he can legally operate there. And I found that experience to be the most profound I have ever had. It's known as the Mount Everest of psychedelics. And so I'm curious, why did you choose Ibogaine?
It's a great question. I think a few different reasons. You know, one, I saw it work. I have a relation. My wife grew up with severe intergenerational trauma and some of the more common maladaptive forms of relief. And when I met her, she had struggled with that, but had tried every conventional mode of therapeutic engagement, multiple facilities, lots of pharmaceuticals, and it hadn't satisfied her. And so when I met her, she told me about her past and her life. And, I was sitting with someone who seemed like the healthiest, most grounded, most active person. I couldn't believe that she had suffered the way she had. And when she explained to me that she had been to all these other places in the world and would do what they asked and then would get out or finish the programs and would end up back where she felt like she started. I had no idea that I would eventually try to create a solution for people that are experiencing that. I just thought, oh, I'm so grateful that she's well. And I saw her get an MBA and we had children. And, I've always been an entrepreneur. I started in management consulting, focused on growth strategy and innovation. But I too grew up in a household of severe trauma and went that same conventional route. I wish I had found a psychiatrist like Dr. Shannon, because those that I did find along the way, they didn't seem like troublemakers. They saw me as a troublemaker, and it felt like many of them wanted me to take more medication that would numb parts of myself that I really cherished. I just wanted to feel better, feel peace, and not fall apart at the end of the day, every day. So in any event, I met my wife, fell in love with my wife. I saw her highly productive and successful in her own right. And as the culture and science and policy shifts related to psychedelics emerged, I knew that she had gone to Mexico 16 years ago to do Ibogaine. And I knew that the experience for her was terrifying, harrowing, and that there was no clinical infrastructure, no therapeutic infrastructure, no hospitality, nothing. It was just somebody's house where she could do Ibogaine. But I never thought I would do anything about it until in 2021, I saw an article that said there had been 100,000 overdose deaths in the United States in 1 year for the first time. And I had known for years that there was a solution to that. In fact, I was in love with someone who had experienced that solution and still am. And I thought, that's like a 747 falling out of the sky every single day. And yet there's this solution that's available in Mexico and works. Why isn't there a place that would be good enough for my wife if she needed it today? If there was, as there are 300 people or so dying every day, and in most other sectors, there would be Operation Warp Speed for this. But there wasn't for opioid use disorder or PTSD or TBI. And so I literally set out to try to create the place where if she needed it today would be good enough for the love of my life. We chose Ibogaine because it works, both on the neurochemical side. It changes the brain chemistry. We're now learning it changes some of the structure of the brain. It also has this very deep introspective psychedelic experience called this life review that no other psychedelic seems to be able, or no other medicine seems to be able to achieve. And no one else was doing it. I truly believed that it's the most complicated, but also the most important technology in this sector. And I really wanted to find out, is there a way to have fully licensed, fully credentialed, MDs, we have 11 full-time doctors now, working to facilitate the evaluation, preparation, administration, and integration of this medicine. Started small and decided that Ibogaine was the technology that we wanted to focus on because it's highly effective.
Now, you also question the therapy and medicine model versus the model that you are focused on, which is kind of similar to Dr. Shannon, which kind of looks at the whole person, not necessarily just the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that for just a quick moment?
Sure. We employ licensed therapists. We employ some therapists that serve as coaches. We have 23 ICU certified nurses and 11 doctors, half of whom are board certified in intensive care, emergency medicine, psychiatry, one anesthesiologist. They don't do those things at Beyond, but that's where they come from. We believe that their technical skills are crucial to their success and our success. I believe in therapy. I think that therapists in particular have an important role to play when someone is in acute crisis, for sure. But I also believe that the reason that Beyond exists is to help people discover and harness the power to heal themselves. That they're doing a lot of different work at Beyond, outside of Beyond, before they come, after they leave, in community, individually, and with therapeutic expertise at their side. But they're doing the work. The medicine isn't doing the work. We believe that experiential medicine is the domain where clinicians actually have to engage at a deeper level with their clients or patients. We don't believe in, subscribing to the idea that we administer drugs and make something go away. They end up feeling better because they've learned something important about the root cause of trauma and how to change their relationship with these experiences, not only painful past experiences, but many, in fact, all of the most meaningful memories of their life. And so there is a role for therapists and clinicians in the care continuum and the model that Beyond represents and has pioneered. But it isn't in the conventional role of opening the DSM and labeling someone with a condition and then plowing them with a numbing agent to make them feel better. It's actually to facilitate growth and healing and personal development and change in alignment with who they want to become. We routinely treat people for PTSD and TBI and treatment-resistant depression and anxiety and chemical dependence. And the clinicians and therapists are very important to our success with those patient populations, but they're not more important than the guests themselves. We believe in science, but not more than compassion. And we believe that the experience, not just the psychedelic experience, the entire experience of how they engage, how they form that alliance, how they vision their journey on the other side of their healing and growth and change is the medicine. The experience itself is the medicine. We're not subscribing to the view that we should prescribe something that someone would take daily, not feel anything or feel better, but sort of discontinue their therapeutic engagement. We have
Well, I think you mentioned the experience as the medicine. And one of the things that I noticed from being there is just operational excellence beyond operational excellence with the experience. Like I didn't even know what I was coming into, and you have just like perfected a system there that's just pretty incredible. And it was clear to me that when you administered the medicine, that was only a fraction of the overall experience. And it was from the moment you arrived until the entire thing was the medicine. Like
Yeah,
without the entire experience, I don't know if it would have been as effective.
I appreciate that. I mean, obviously, Ibogaine is known to have certain risks that other psychedelics don't. And so we have to work back from risk mitigation. and make sure that we have meticulously designed every process to increase safety. And then, but we also don't want to be so controlling and so focused on the elimination of risk that it becomes an experience that no one would want to have. You can think of Beyond as like the right amount of a hospital mixed with the right amount of a mental health, and we say mental health and optimization facility, the right amount of a personal development retreat with the tools and the community and the coaching and the inspiration. And also, we deeply respect people's autonomy. They're free to use our platform in the best way that works for them. We're not here to, we say we're guides, not guards. And then it's nested in an environment where you're allowed to feel comfortable. Like, people are going through heroic levels of change in their relationship with themselves and the people that are around them, that care about them and their life in general. They should be allowed to lay out in the sun or, get a massage every day and eat good food and be celebrated, and honored and respected. And so thank you for your kind words, but all of the activities are designed to integrate, to amplify the effect of the psychedelic healing. The ibogaine, from our perspective, is a how, it's not a what. They're not coming for their ibogaine, they're coming for what the ibogaine helps them achieve. And so
Yeah.
our mission is to help them utilize that technology, that plant medicine, in a way that will increase the likelihood of their satisfaction.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom. Very
Thank
impressive
you.
work. And I mean, I'm glad that someone of your talent has chosen Ibogaine to bring to as many people as possible. And I know Joe Rogan spotlighted you, and that was a big win. I think
I
I met
appreciate it.
several people who had come from the Joe Rogan show while I
Yeah.
was there. All
Thank
right.
you, Julie.
Thanks, Tom. All right. Tony. So
Hello.
you're relatively new to this space. Um, when did you decide to enter into the psychedelic care space?
I think my pathway into this is probably different than everyone else's, and I feel like I'm really standing on the shoulders of folks like Scott, and Josh, who had more experience and more advocacy for this. Basically, Gladstone was started is just a way to provide the sort of mental health care that my family needed, to everyone else. So similar to Tom's, building, the beyond, to meet the needs of what his wife would have needed, kind of thing. So, in my family, we've had a lot of chaos, a lot of need for psychiatric services. And, I just saw just how badly things are being done. And I was literally in the right place at the right time to, be able to start this up. And I'm not an entrepreneur, unlike, some of these other folks. I'm not, but I just sort of did it anyway in kind of a crazy way. And I was just really focused on just meds and therapy, and that was it until a therapist who at the time was working for us, is Candace Oglesby, just sort of dragged me into doing capping. She wanted to do it. She's like, I need to have a prescriber. So I was like, okay, I guess I can do that. And it's when I saw just how much people have improved. And it's not this bravado improvement. It is like this integrative therapy. It is the medicines are just there to kind of open the door. People still have to walk through it, and they often need guidance to make sure they don't trip over the threshold or anything. Um, but yeah, so it was more serendipity, and when you see the results, it's like, wow, this is amazing. And as it turned out, at Gladstone, there's quite a few people that are interested in learning more about this, and so we just started opening up. Hey, if you want to learn some more, we'll pay for it. And now we got a program going.
Now, when you see people coming to your place to look for psychedelics, do they happen to know what's their understanding of this medicine and what information do you provide? Or is it just like it's ketamine and that's all there is? Or people like, is MDMA available? How do you get to ibogaine? And what do you kind of see as the knowledge base of people entering?
Right. Well, we're actually very fortunate in Maryland. We have several pretty decent research institutions looking at psychedelics and doing trials. There's Johns Hopkins, there's Sunstone Therapies, Shepherd Pratt is doing some work as well. So if somebody wants a medicine or wants to try a psychedelic that's not approved, but for general use, but is approved for research, we'll just say, "Hey, if you're really interested in MDMA, it looks like Hopkins has a trial, or Sunshine has a trial for this. Here's the contact," or we'll even do a warm transfer in some instances. Um, but with the ketamine, it's really um, uh, people actually at this point we're not really marketing ketamine so much. So we're approaching patients who are in our clinic already who aren't doing well, and we're like, let, let's see if something else may, potentially, do the trick for you here. And just in that conversation, talk a lot about ketamine as, kind of a psychedelic, medicine, and it can give kind of a psychedelic experience. But really the whole, it's not you just come in and you get the meds and next day you get into radiation therapy. There's a whole process of learning about what we're going to do, prepping, making sure that people have an intention, a why to this. So it's not just, oh, I want to just get a buzz. It's, like what that may happen, but what are you, where do you, what are we aiming for here? So it really is, it's an informed discussion that I think we can have. But I'd say the baseline knowledge of the folks that we're bringing in our ketamine clinic is pretty minimal towards psychedelics. It's not a great deal of knowledge.
Now, I've noticed a lot of ketamine clinics around the country, specific the ones that have started or have been around a little while, just provide an infusion. You come
Mhm.
in, get your infusion, they check on you, see if you're okay for a second, and then they're like, "Thank you very much, goodbye." What was your thought as a new entrant in this space, looking at that model versus the shoulder of giants model of a Scott Shannon?
Well, you just have to make a decision as a business owner. Are you going to go for the most money? Because an infusion clinic, you bring in a lot of cash. I mean, it is a money maker. Um, and, I just didn't want to do that. I mean, the reasons I went into this is really, I wanted, just like Tom said, I want to provide a space for people to heal that, and that's it. I mean, that's what I want to do. It's, so for me, it was pretty easy to say, well, what's the best? Any program that we're starting at Gladstone, we have a few others that are kind of interesting as well. Let's start off with what's the best practice? How to make this absolutely the best? And so with guidance from some other very smart people, just turn to what are the researchers doing with the psychedelics? Can we kind of pattern on that? Because that seems to, if we're thinking of this as a psychedelic, if we're thinking that the integrative therapy is really a key, to this, the improvement that people notice, what how do we do that? How do we set up a structure that supports that? And importantly, how do we get it paid for? Because again, the mission of Gladstone is we're in network with insurance. We don't do out of network stuff. So we had to really kind of figure out how to get that model and squeeze it into something that would generate a profit of something above zero.
Now, you've actually gotten some insurance coverage and some approval on, I think you're an intake or something in that
Pretty much
area.
all the services we have are covered by the usual CPT outpatient CPT codes available for psychiatrists and therapists. So it's nothing unusual, the thing that's really, if for folks in the audience who are thinking like, well, how do you do this with insurance? I can just, I'll just, kind of go ahead and spill the beans on this one. Sorry for the spoiler alert. That the issue to be worked out, and it has not been worked out yet, with insurance, is how to provide the payment for the therapist who is the guide during the experience. Now, the good thing with ketamine, that's really only about 2.5 hours. You need to have someone at the patient's side. But with some of these other molecules that have much longer, periods of action, that, making sure that because that therapist is actually not just trained as a master's level therapist, they have extra training in, in the psychedelics, and that not only does that cost money, they rightly expect to have a premium reimbursement for themselves for doing the work. And I totally get that. And, so we just have to figure out how to like, thread that needle. We need to make sure that, we do have the revenue from the insurers so that we could pay the therapist enough. But I can tell you right now, anything that's going to be more than about 3.5 hours, really going to need some different, codes from the insurance, or at least a different approval approach for what's naturally approved. But it's like it just doesn't compute for them.
Well, I really like that you're sharing the secrets behind getting insurance coverage and that it's not an elusive thing and that anybody entering this space or wanting to be in this space can achieve for their business as well. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, man. I think that, it's look, you can just do the infusion clinics and send them home and not worry about anything, make money. But if you really want to do the right thing, if you really want to help people, help your community, then it takes a little bit of work, and you're not gonna have dollar bills raining down on you like you would with these other services.
One last question, because you are the only one on this call right now who has not taken outside funding at this time. We heard Scott's story of, and you shared as well, your background was not business. But what's your reason? And I assume similar to Scott, you've been approached by quite a lot of people as well.
Right. Yeah. And I have to say it's slowed down a little bit. There was a time during the pandemic that every week I was getting several offers to, hey, we would like to purchase your thing. But it's really, it's just what I have seen locally in kind of the Baltimore, Washington area of what happens when practices are purchased by outside investors. So it's private equity is the usual investor. That just doesn't seem to really bode well for the quality of care that goes forward. Now that may change down the road, but I mean, there's not going to be a whole line of Wall Street folks lining up after what I just said about like you can make more money doing this, but doing that, So it's a tension, and not every and fortunately, I'm just again serendipity. I've just been a lucky soul that we're actually able to get by. We're making money, and we're taking insurance, and people pay $20 for a visit instead of whatever the higher amounts are in this area. Um, so the benefit for me on a personal level is I fall asleep awful well, and I wake up and I'm ready to get going with the day. I feel like I'm really doing good in the world.
Great. Thank you, Tony. And thank you for being in
Thanks.
the medical profession and really focusing on the quality of care that you want to offer, which you've mentioned. And I think that's meaningful to everybody on the call today.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Julie.
All right, Josh Stevens. So, Josh, you and I met, I think we had our first phone call, and I know you thought I was a little unusual. Explain what's different about me to what you normally talk to.
Well, you're more evolved than most people. Let's start there. And so evolution is a rare skill, a rare experience to have. But But I think there's a lot of goodness on this call, and I don't want to repeat what other people have said, but I will say that there's alignment on so many fundamental values in terms of providing a space for people to heal is core to what we're doing. I think the idea of um, whole person health, which at least in the traditional medical model is not looking at just behavioral health or just physical health or just spiritual health, but looking at all of these things together as part of a comprehensive approach to healthcare. It's rare in the medical model and it's possible. And I think also looking at balancing the drive towards just give people a pill or just give people medicine. And I couldn't agree more with what Tom said. The medicine doesn't necessarily solve the problem. It's the work someone has to do with the medicine. And someone has to be ready for change and be prepared for that too. So screening for fit, finding the right tools, if they be medicines or therapy or both, and or other modalities like TMS, and finding the right personalized approach for whole person health is where we're focused. And that's how I came into this after being in tech for 30 years and healthcare for 15 years. I was approached by the Fieldings and was asked to help see if we could bring some of the lessons learned from diabetes to behavioral health in terms of enabling a pathway to remission and to balance access with impact. And there is so much great impact that's going on in psychedelics. I've been blown away from it and by it from just what I've seen across all the different molecules. But the access issue is meaningful and challenging. And so, like Tony, we're taking an insurance first approach. I think that Tony is very wise to say that insurance is not mystical. We quite agree. Insurance is not mystical. It's a pain, but it's not mystical. And we're working with insurers to help evolve the insurance model, which is open to evolution, albeit glacially, so that fee for outcomes is where we're focused versus fee for service. So that we should be paid for people to get better, not paid just to give them more ketamine or more Prozac or more medications. And that's really the biggest failure, I think, of our system built around billing and the razor blade model of just keep giving them stuff. And to imagine a world where patients can be off of medication and have a pathway to remission is really our North Star. And we know that all people can't get there, but we also know that that's a viable path for many. And for those who can't get to remission, how do we bring them down the path towards abatement of symptoms and better control? And for those who can't have abatement, at least better control so they don't become worse, and enable for all a return to function and a return to lifestyle. This can all be measured. And it's not just behavioral health. So my experience in diabetes and metabolic disease have taught us if I learned one thing from it, it's that mental health is profoundly impacted by physical health. And over half of all patients who come in to our clinics with anxiety or depression or PTSD are also suffering mightily with a physical health debilitation, typically weight, typically diabetes, or typically NAFLD or NASH. And those things can be remitted. And as physical health comes into control, mental health has a better door opening to come into control. But to add, for those who don't respond to traditional medications, which is at least half of the population, to add a gateway opening for the non-responders to traditional meds like ketamine and then psilocybin and then MDMA and ultimately ibogaine, to open up and make therapy a viable option so that people can do the work they need to do, we think is super exciting. And that's going to enable a value-based model for behavioral health that doesn't really exist yet at its scale.
So I think you mentioned to me you used to be a YPO member. Is
Long,
that correct? A
long
long time ago, back in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And as you know, YPO members tend to be either founders or CEOs or presidents, or they come in from different manifestations. When I think of you, and tell me if I got this right, I kind of feel like you got into this space as a hired gun. Like the Fieldings came and said, who can we pick to run this in a way that maybe hasn't been run before? would you identify yourself in that way or not?
Well, I appreciate the provocateur side of the question. I've never been called a hired gun to my knowledge in my life until now. And I would say that I was preparing to do my next adventure, which is in hospice and palliative care, because I think in healthcare, after physical health, particularly metabolic disease, I think there's two other big rocks in healthcare that need to be moved. And I'm really only motivated at this time in my life by education and healthcare as sectors that I get joy or intrinsic motivation from being in. And I think everyone has to deal with the palliative hospice system at some point in their lives. And most everybody deals with the physical health system, and most everybody deals with the mental health system. But these all have major opportunities. And so, on my way to solving or trying to solve some hospice palliative issues at scale, Rock Fielding and I ended up connecting. And I don't mind saying that I basically said, no, thanks, I'm not interested in psychedelics right now. And as I learned more, and as more was revealed to me about the science, but also the impact and the lack of access, it became extremely compelling to me to see that there's a great amount of good work that could be done. So while I fully expect to go after palliative hospice problems in the future, because those won't fully go away in our lifetime, I do expect that there's a lot of help we can have in the space. So I volunteered to participate versus I get to be a hired gun as through free
Yeah.
will, free choice, exercising my freedom. And it's been nothing short of transformational for me, getting to know people like Scott, and getting to know folks like Jameson, for example, and the Fieldings, and getting to meet Amanda before she passed. So I think the thing that I'm seeing and didn't really fully understand is the enormous gap coming from the establishment side of healthcare to some extent, that insurers just don't realize how much money they could save by having a better solution. And the explicit bias against psychedelics is very real in the establishment and doesn't have to be that way. So we've taken it upon ourselves to work with donors, to work with nonprofits, and to work with scientists and partners like Scott and Tom and Tony, I hope, to demonstrate the empirical value of psychedelics as a tool in the toolbox of behavioral and physical health, so that we can lower risk and lower cost for insurers, who will then be more willing to accept some of and overcome some of their explicit bias against this category of medicine, as they see that the impact can be profound and beneficial for them too.
Now, I want my final question, then we'll move to the questions that have come in, is uh, we talked a little bit about the culture, the psychedelic culture, when Scott spoke, and how did you feel like entering this space voluntarily? That was very different, maybe, from anything you'd experienced before in terms of the people in this space.
Well, I think there's something that's common to the psychedelic community that's also common to innovators in other communities, which is people that do things that work are often considered crazy when they go against the grain of an establishment practice. And I think that there's many folks in the establishment who are threatened by this. And I think that that's absolutely true because, and we saw this in the diabetes space, by helping people get out of type 2 diabetes and get better and not have type 2 for the rest of their lives. That's actually not a good news story for a lot of pharmaceutical and drug companies who make insulin. So we're actually going against the grain of the establishment of saying you don't have to be on certain drugs for the rest of your life. You can actually get better. By helping the mental health sector get many people better or into a significant abatement of symptoms and to return to function, is really bad news for a lot of pharmaceutical drugs. We see medication and therapy and drugs and TMS as tools, not as lifelong annuities that people should just keep paying for because it serves a purpose to keep people sick and just sick enough to stay on a medication. And if there's one thing I think we all agree on, people don't have to stay sick when they have things that work. And I think everyone here has seen the transformative power of psychedelics far more than classical prescription drugs. And 75% of our patients come from hospital discharge. So when we receive patients from the hospitals, typically they're on the 7th or 8th medication for depression or anti-anxiety or antipsychotic. And we know statistically that if you go to 2 to 3 drugs, you have a 90% chance that no other drugs in the class of approved meds are going to work for you. So why not try alternative therapies like this that can actually have an impact? And as we can gather that data and bring that data back to the insurers, we're seeing a great deal of interest to say, maybe we should cover this as a bundled payment that looks at the whole person. Let's cover the therapy, which typically is too shallow to actually help anybody when someone gets 10 sessions a year in insurance, and they might need 30 sessions. So let's actually give them the 30 sessions they need, plus the medication and medicine that opens them up to the therapy so they can do the work to have the impact.
Thank you, Josh. We are now going to open it up to questions, and I appreciate you letting me throw a couple curveballs at you. Okay. Our first question. What limits your ability to take a Starbucks strategy and placing a clinic on every corner, given the apparent need for new mental health solutions? Lack of demand, lack of knowledge, other? What do
I
you
can
think,
start
Tony?
off.
You've got multiple locations.
Yeah, I have 5 locations now, and probably building out some more over time. That opening up renting a space or buying a space and opening up, that's the easy thing. The staffing it is much harder, particularly staffing with folks who would be good, therapists in this area. So, kind of getting that going is that's probably the I think that's the rate limiting step right there, is that there's the therapists who have had the training that would be a good starting point. We sort of think of ourselves as an ongoing training organization as well, but the therapists who would be good to come on in, they're commanding a reimbursement rate that's higher than what we can pay. So then, so now we're thinking, well, we'll just bring on people who seem like they'd be a good fit and, give them the training. But then that takes time, it's expensive, and it takes a while to recoup the expense for the training.
So you're
So it's
saying it's not coffee.
right. It's different because well, think about it. Coffee beans are a commodity. The therapists who are good at this are not a commodity.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, next
Not
question.
barista. I
Oh,
think
go
you
ahead,
mean
Tom.
baristas, Julie.
Sorry,
Even more than a barista. It's not about the coffee, it's about the experience.
true. Okay, next question is from Courtney Dorn. Where would you recommend a 19-year-old with depression and anxiety start with psychedelics for healing? Tom, let's start with you, because I know you do have a few young people that do attend Beyond, and that's, for most, would be a lot in the beginning.
I mean, I would start with therapeutic evaluation, probably by someone locally that's already working with them, to begin a conversation about how severe this depression is and what options they might consider. And only then I would hope that care provider would help facilitate identifying options that would include psychedelics. But I think I don't have a lot of information to work here, but local ketamine, depending upon the level of severity in the moment, among the psychedelics might be a good place to start, but only with support, decision-making support from somebody who understands the whole spectrum and landscape of psychedelics.
Now, Scott, you wrote a book called Don't
Please
Label Your
label my
Child.
child.
Please don't label my child. So
Yeah.
someone's coming in, they have a label of their child with depression and anxiety. What are you thinking? as
So
the
I think the first part is it, and Tom alluded to this, it has to be a comprehensive evaluation. Have they gotten good care? Do we really have this problem characterized? How are the basic fundamentals in their life, like diet, exercise, sleep, and relationships? And, then we have to look if it's a mild problem and they've not had a lot of care, I don't think we want to start with psychedelics. It's a big hammer. And I think we have to try to balance what they need with the fit of what is available. At our clinic, if it's a mild to moderate problem and they have failed conventional care, we'd probably start with ketamine just because it's an easier entry point. And then we would reserve moving up to psilocybin um, as needed. But on the other hand, if it was a very severe problem and they were deeply entrenched and they were looking for more of a long-term solution, I would probably recommend psilocybin because it has durability. Ketamine doesn't tend to have the durability that um, psilocybin does.
All right, my next question is what is different about running a ketamine or experiential medicine clinic versus running a mental health clinic or non-experiential healing center? Great question. Those are all terms that have been thrown around on this call. What is the
Well, I think
difference?
I think it's a bit about the complexity and trying to create an environment and culture that can sustain the depth of work you're trying to do. And, I think um, Tony alluded to it. Not only do you need to pull in great staff, but you have to find staff that fit with each other and create an atmosphere of trust and love and support. Because if you have the best people and they don't like each other, it's not a good place to do psychedelics.
All right, next question. How do you feel about the state of Colorado toying with the idea of allowing state clinics to provide ibogaine as a medicine? Is that safe, smart, or naive?
Who's that for?
It's for anybody who'd like to answer, but Tom, maybe it's for you as the ibogaine is in there.
I have some concerns about it. I think it can be done safely from the primary, risk profile, cardiac risk in particular. So I think it can be done safely. I think they'll work that out. I think it'll be very expensive, and that's unfortunate, and access will be very limited. Unfortunately, I do think that I have some concerns about the primary purpose being efficiency and minimizing the cost. And so the preparation, I think the evaluation will have to be there, but the preparation, the support to really ensure that someone is ready for ibogaine as a very deep and profound psychedelic experience. My concern is it'll be truncated or eliminated entirely. It'll be like other medicines. Check yourself into a hospital, get a workup, and someone will give you the medicine, and at best, check on you occasionally. And that's not how this should be done, in my opinion. The systems that over systemization and institutionalization will, I fear, cause dedicated, committed care providers to be unable to do what their patients really need or what they want to do to support them. And that would include the integration. And so I would hope that that could get worked out in a way where clinical professionals are able to do the work that they want to do in that system, in a state facility. I have some serious reservations and doubts as to whether that'll happen.
Now, we are over time right now. Is it okay to ask one more question? All right.
Yeah.
Here's our final question for today, and it goes right into what you just mentioned, Tom. What responsibility do clinics have for the ongoing work required by the patient to achieve whole person health? How do they assist patients or clients with that work, if at all? And when I think of whole person health, Josh, I think, and we talked about this a little bit, is beyond remission. Like there's remission and then there's beyond remission.
Yeah, so I'll be happy to take a stab at that. I mean, when we receive a patient from hospital discharge, we assume that we're now their behavioral health provider until they tell us we're not. And that's through mortality. So someone can have remission and someone can also have backsliding, but also many people won't make it to remission. That's a goal. It's a good North Star. But how do we become the home base for behavioral health and coordinate with primary care for the rest of that patient's life? It's not a transaction. It's not a quick hit of ketamine. It's not a quick hit of Prozac. It's actually how do we help them get better and stay better or get to their best place? And that's going to be highly personalized for that patient as we stratify the population of what fits for them. So I couldn't agree more with the idea that ibogaine isn't for everybody, nor is Prozac. It's we don't want to use hammers in search of nails, but we have a portfolio of tools that we have to then deploy as appropriate for the patient in front, and then look at them as someone who we have been given a special privilege to support their care through mortality, as how we see it as a provider.
Right. Any final comments from our panelists? All
Well,
right.
a
Go
bit
ahead,
of the
Scott.
Wild West out there, so be cautious as you approach this field and understand that it's got all the excitement and challenges of the Wild West.
And how long? It's been a Wild West for how long, Scott?
Well, I mean, it feels like the last 5 years that the interest in ketamine has escalated, and now psilocybin and ibogaine. So I think it's 5 years we've been in this sort of accelerating phase, which has gone through some bumps, but mostly up.
And Julie, if I can just add that, you know, right along with what Scott is saying, that the temptation, there's a huge temptation to cut corners. And I think that people need to recognize that, and and have someone to talk to when they're feeling like, oh, I can do this a lot more efficiently. Efficient usually means the corners being cut. And maybe there are some things that could be. I mean, that'd be great. I would expect research, like real scientists to tell me, not some, someone wearing a green eye shade or something. But it's a huge temptation. It's there, and you just have to deal with it.
Final words from you, Josh?
I would be aware of anyone who wants to give medicine without a workup. I'd be aware of anyone who wants to give medicine as a first hammer. And I would look at those who are caring for your child or your family member or yourself as someone who's looking at the long term, not as a transactional relationship.
And Tom, your final words?
I think that's right. I agree with my colleagues. Psychedelics don't scale like software. This isn't, there are operating systems involved, and systemization is extremely important and helpful, but it scales, the way trust and relationships scale, a person at a time, family at a time, and a team member at a time. And I don't, I think that this is a very exciting time to be providing this type of care, both as a care provider, as an entrepreneur, as an investor. But I think that sometimes it's best to go slow to go fast.
All right, Tony Massey, Dr. Scott Shannon, and Josh Stevens and Tom Fiegel, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm Julie Simon, co-chair of the YPO Psychedelic Medicine for Mental Health Group, and we will see you next month. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Julie. Nice to be with you all.
Thanks.
Thank
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.